All right, so I just want to talk about my obsession with Craig Jones from Slipknot. I guess it all started when I got the self-titled album, which is my favorite fucking Slipknot album ever. The self-titled album uh, did things to me. It activated so much unreal shit that within my own creativity, within my soul, within just like, I don't know. I went through a massive spiritual conscious awakening when I first heard the self-titled album when I was in 5th grade. I remember I got the CD back in 5th grade, and it was like school was just about to end. And this is when Circuit City was still around. So this was like 2006. There was a Circuit City in Massapequa, and I was there with my dad and my sister for some, I don't know, they were getting something for her or whatever, some iPod shit, or this was back when iPods were around. And wow, like the iPhone was like just coming out because it was 2006, 2007. And I saw the Slipknot CD, I saw the self-titled CD on the shelf. And I got it. I always knew about Slipknot. And like, I don't know, there was like, the internet wasn't what it was 2006. Plus, I was, fucking 10 years old. So, anyways, I just remember listening to it like on the way to our restaurant, and just like the first time I heard 7426, the intro, it fucking changed me. Like, I remember how I felt in that moment. I felt fucking changed. I felt like, what did this just awaken in me? I'm not talking about the vocals. I'm not talking about the whole thing I think is sick. I'm talking about the synth. The I feel like, okay, so from that moment is when I became obsessed with Craig Jones, because the first thing I said was, who in the band made this? Like, who made this, right? And then that's when I started researching. I started, going down the rabbit hole of just fucking researching anything Slipknot, anything and anything Slipknot, right? And just, yeah, like, just the way it sounded in my dad's Tahoe, it like that his car has such a good sound system, and just like, I can fucking remember just like it was spring in the air. It was like the sun was out, and I just like I was just, that album is just a fucking musical circus, right? And I remember hearing Tattered and Torn for the first time, Deluded, No Life. Those are the songs I started like gravitating towards. Like, I really became obsessed with like those lesser known Slipknot songs. Like, I'm like, again, like Deluded, No Life, Liberate, Tattered and Torn. When I heard Tattered and Torn, oh my God, right? And I was like, how are they making these sounds? Like, I didn't know, like, this is like way before, I was playing drums, right? I grew up playing drums, and like, the first thing I did was death metal drums. And I used to have covers on YouTube of my Slipknot covers. Like, I was playing, like, I had a Pearl master kit, I had the double bass, I had all Paste Rude, Pasty 2003, Thin Crash, the whole nine, right? But like, when I heard Tattered and Torn, and I hear the sample of the synths and No Life and, Liberate, and I was like, how do they make these sounds? That's the first thing I thought of. Like, how do you even make that? Like, that doesn't sound like a guitar. Doesn't sound like, anything I could think of. And then that's when I discovered Craig Jones and like what he does. And I didn't understand what sampling was like at that age. Like when you look up Craig Jones, you get like, oh, the sampler of Slipknot. Like, I didn't know what that meant. And so yeah, like, it just sent me down this whole path for years of just like, wow, like everything about, like, mind you, this is like 2007, 2006, right? So like, this is like, technically late to the game with Slipknot, because they've been around since, the 90s, and that album came out in 99. I was born in 97. So, to discover the self-titled album, in 2006, 2007, like, that's, almost a decade later, right? and I was just getting into Slipknot, and then I got into Iowa, and then then into Volume 3 and whatnot, and so on and so forth. But man, like and then when you start researching Craig Jones, you start researching Slipknot, and you start looking at Slipknot interviews. Like, I just remember every day, like after school, like going to my parents' restaurant, sitting at table 54, and fucking just anything and anything Slipknot, just googling Slipknot, YouTubing Slipknot all fucking day, and just like fascinating, like just all this emphasis and focus around Craig Jones, right? Like, I just wanted to understand like what the fuck he did. Like, I didn't get it. I didn't get what sampling was. So yeah, like, fuck, like just my whole life as a Slipknot fan, like I was just always just the new, like I am obsessed with Slipknot, like vintage Slipknot shit, like anything old Slipknot, the formation of Slipknot, it's in its conceptual phases, like I'm obsessed with. I'm obsessed with like all those enclaves, right? So yeah, that's like, the history of my Slipknot fandom, right? I also when I was so like about a year later, we had this waiter at our restaurant, and he like knew all these people that like could get all access passes, and like, I think he used to actually be a tour manager at one point, but he just had all these musical connections, right? And he managed to hook us up with Metal Mayhem tickets. And this is like 2009 when it was when it was the All Hope Is Gone tour. So they were on Metal Mayhem Festival at Nassau Coliseum, and I met all of them. I brought the fucking self-titled album. Man, I'm gonna make a whole separate video on that. I'm gonna make a whole separate video. Is that even worth doing? Yeah. So anyways, so back to Craig Jones. Actually, you know what? Fuck it. I'll tell it here. But yeah, no. Metal Mayhem Festival was a fucking trip because, like I said, like I was still stuck on self-titled Iowa and, all the early day shit, right? And like, they were already onto All Hope Is Gone, like a new sound, like, it was a whole different, sonically, different sound, right? When, wow, like I remember we get to Nassau Coliseum, right? We went, it was like during the daytime, so it was like 2 p.m., like 4 p.m. by now, right? And the first time I saw Corey Taylor, he was in tidy whities on stage. I don't know what they were doing, but it was like him, Sid, and like that's all I kind of really remember. But Sid was in a wheelchair at the time. The first time I saw Corey Taylor, he was in tidy whities. It was like no shirt on, like not like it was just tidy whities, right? And he had sunglasses and some like fedora type hat, and they were just throwing like peeps, like the marshmallow peeps, like off some stage. And that was the first time I ever saw Corey Taylor, and I think that's fucking hilarious because like I just recently like figured out what they all looked like unmasked, like, just like Googling them, and then like the first time I see him, he's like in fucking tidy whities, like throwing peeps off stage. I think that's fucking hilarious. But him and Sid were there, and like they were just like banging on like random percussion instruments, and Sid had like a big ass triangle, like a ding 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 triangle, and he sees me, and he wheels himself over to me, and he's like, "Hey kid, you want a triangle?" And that was it. And then he gives me the triangle. We take a picture. I still have that picture somewhere. Man, I have like it's somewhere on like a really old fucking Dell laptop. But man, like that was a fucking trip. And then I didn't get to meet Mick. The only ones I got to meet were Corey, Corey, Sid. I met Joey Jordison. I met fucking Joey Jordison, dude. I met Joey Jordison. And it was just real quick, and just like I was so stunned, dude. It was just like that was before the show started, like, in the backstaging areas, and just the back of Nassau Coliseum, and just like it's such a trip to be like, you know, to be just to vocalize like, hey Joey, could you sign this? Like that was like that tripped me out, right? Like just to be you know, you watch these people, you form this whole unicorn essence about them, right? And then like it's just such a trip to like call their name in real life, right? Like I don't know, that's strange. But Joey, well, yeah, he signed it. Jim Root signed it. I don't think I met Chris Fenn. I don't know if I remember Chris Fenn. But the whole time, I'm looking for Craig. And I was gonna say I was so mad at myself. I pussied out because I was like, yo, in my head, I'm like, I want to tell Corey, like, hey, can you guys start playing Tattered and Torn live? Uh, and I didn't. I pussied out. I pussied the fuck out. That infuriates me, right? Like, I don't know why bands don't go back, right? Like, I would be able to live happily and fulfilled if I could direct and edit a music video for either No Life, Tattered and Torn. Well, Tattered and Torn is the number one priority. If I can get Slipknot to go back, put on all their retro gear, all their retro masks and fucking jumpsuits, and if they would let me direct and edit a video for Tattered and Torn, that is like my childhood dreams come true. And it's like, I don't know. I remember thinking that from a young age. Like, why don't bands go back and make an old music video? Like, make a music video, a new music video for an old song. Why don't they do that? Like, fans would love. It's not like what do they think's gonna happen, right? Like fans are not gonna like it. Like, you know, dude, if a video came out for Tattered and Torn, Slipknot fans would lose their fucking minds. Slipknot fans would lose their fucking minds if they came out with a brand new video for Tattered and Torn. They never made a video for it ever, but like, and if they started playing that shit live, like, again, I am so obsessed with vintage Slipknot. But yeah, dude, like, you know, the whole time I'm backstage, I was looking for Craig. Where is Craig? Where is Craig Jones? Where is Craig Jones? All I have to reference is like the shitty Google blurry pictures I had back in 2007. And I'm like, where's Craig Jones? Where's Craig Jones? I didn't ask anybody. So I didn't get to meet Craig Jones. I mean, I'm sure many don't, right? Like, where the fuck does Craig Jones go when fans are trying to meet him? Because, you know, Corey and Sid, they're all out and about. Like, I don't know. Like, I couldn't find Craig, right? But those are like my Slipknot fantasies. Like, my Slipknot fantasies, again, is to like direct and edit a video for either Tattered and Torn, No Life, or Liberate, and to have Craig Jones on my podcast, to interview Craig Jones for like an hour, 2 hours long, and just pick his brain about the technicalities and all the shit that went into recording and mixing, mastering the self-titled album, and just all of that just nerdy studio shit. I could live happily ever after that. And do you have any idea what that would do to the minds of Slipknot fans to see Craig Jones on a podcast? Like, the fact that there's footage of the guy talking for 5 seconds, like, creates like this whole conspiracy of Slipknot fans, right? And like, imagine Craig Jones explaining, you know, the studio process over an hour-long podcast. That would be revolutionary. So, back to what I was saying, man. Okay, so back to the synth, right? I know I got all. When I'm talking about Slipknot, my mind just goes in a million different directions, right? So the 7426 synth, right? All right. So before that, I'll give more context, right? I've always had, like, you know, I started going down watching rabbit hole videos of Craig Jones samples and whatnot. And I started having like these really weird like visions, like these weird like psychic I don't know, like peeks into the future almost, right? When I would hear certain sounds in Slipknot songs, especially the 7426 sample. So I don't know why, but I always envisioned Craig Jones, like when I hear that I don't know why I always envisioned him somehow in like a negative colored like weird dimension, right? Like like negative colors, like it's like inverted, like whatever that is. I don't know why, but like I always pictured him in some like negative, weird like alien dimension, right? And this is like again, this was back in my days of listening to self-titled. And then a couple months later, like Psychosocial comes out, and then the Dead Memories video comes out. And if anyone knows what the Dead Memories video looks like, it's like Corey Taylor going through all these different rooms and like all the different members, and they all have a different theme to the room and whatnot. And Craig Jones, his part, he was in a fucking negative, weird dimension where he wasn't moving. It was just very, it was like, yeah, it was very stiff, and like the motions were like very like ethereal, not ethereal, like very robotic, or just very just like, otherworldly. And I freaked the fuck out. And it's like, what the fuck? It was like that weird vision I had manifested to reality. So that was the first weird like soulful thing like I had with Craig Jones, right? Then there was that, right? And then I started having dreams. I started like the dreams started happening like within recent years. Like I started having these like weird dreams, like where I ask him, like, how did you make that synth? Like, how did you do it? Now that I'm a producer, now that I produce beats, now that I'm familiar with synthesizers and plugins and, all these things, right? I'm like, I want to figure out, like, how the fuck did he, like, how did he make that, right? And I started having these dreams about it where, like, the first time I had this, I've never had a reoccurring dream ever until I started having these fucking Craig Jones dreams. Never had a fucking reoccurring dream in my life. And I have a lot of fucking bizarre dreams, dude. I had like my whole life, I've always had bizarre ass dreams. Like, I don't know, I have a very strong connection to the dream realm that I want to explore. But the first dream I had, I asked him, like, how did you make this synth? The first response he said to me was, oh, I made it out of a gunshot sound. And then, my producer brain now is like gunshot sound. I'm like thinking about Ableton. I'm thinking about like putting a gunshot sample into Ableton, and like I'm like, how could you get a sound like that out of a gunshot? It didn't make sense, right? Like it made no sense. But it felt like the dream felt so vivid in the fact that like I asked a question and then I got an answer, and then the answer didn't make sense. So I'm thinking about Ableton. I'm thinking about like, how the fuck could you ever get away with like doing something like that? I'm like, the only way that would work is like, I don't know, like in Ableton you could really stretch out like an audio file, like you really like a WAV file, and just really destroy the sound over time. And I'm like, I don't know, that doesn't really make sense. So time goes on, and I have another fucking dream. I have another dream, like where I've never had a reoccurring dream in my life. And here I am having the second Craig Jones dream where I ask him yet again. I ask him again. I said, how did you make that sound? This time he says, oh, I made it out of a laser sound, which makes a little bit more sense. But still, I'm like, a laser sound. I'm like, what are you doing to it? Are you like pitching it down, slowing it down? What, like a laser sound? And again, it was another really vivid dream in the fact that I asked a question and received an answer. Like that's the important part here, is like the vividness of like being in a dream, consciously asking a question and receiving some answer, even though it didn't make fucking sense. Um, so months pass by again, and I have another fucking dream. It sounds so stupid. But I had a third dream, again, the same thing. I asked him yet again, and this time I got no answer. So it went from being, oh, I made it out of a gunshot, oh, I made it out of a laser, to no answer, which I respect. I don't know. Man, to be a fly on the wall when he made that, because I truly think, like, is that a sample or is it a synth? I've looked on Reddit where there's like, you know, some groups are talking about it, but like people always talk about, they get too distracted with the Charles Manson vocal sample that they don't talk about the synth. Like when you go on the internet and say, oh, like what is that 7426 from? People always say, oh, it's the Charles Manson doc. Like we know that. The whole thing I think is sick. The whole thing I think is sick. We know that part. But where does that synth come from? What did he use for that? You know, I think I saw one thing where someone said, oh, it sounds like a guitar pedal thing. Maybe. That was probably the closest answer I got. Like, it very much could be. Like, I don't know. Like, you have to take it into consideration. Like, he probably made that in like 1998, 7, 6. Who the fuck knows? But like, I don't know. I really started having like these weird remote viewings of like, you know, Slipknot in its early days. And just like, I always had this fascination, this fascination fantasy with like seeing how Slipknot recorded and produced and mixed and mastered that self-titled album. Like, where were they? What kind of room were they in? What did it look like? Who is like, you know, like, man, like the closest thing I ever got to that, right? Again, like I started having, you know, weird dreams about it, weird remote type viewings, like weird visions, weird intuitions. And I just started looking into it more and more and more, right? The closest thing, like, you know, again, like my dream is to like, you know, obviously interview the Slipknot members and ask them directly, like, what those days were like and really paint a picture, really paint a visual of like, my God, like what was it like to fucking, what did it look like? What studios are they recording? What memories do they have of that, of recording Deluded, of recording No Life, and recording Liberate, and like all those like, you know, lesser known songs. The closest thing I got to that was when I discovered, it's called Craig's Data, and it's like, you know, some footage from Indigo Ranch where they recorded, you know, the first album, the self-titled, and it was just so, like, most of the video doesn't have audio, but like, you know, my God, dude, it's so derealizing. It's just like looking into a liminal space. It was so, like, when I first saw it, I'm like, whoa, this like really does look like a lot of the visuals I had, this intuition I've had. Like, I don't know, like a lot of it like kind of matched up. It felt so fucking deja vu and weird, and like I felt so much derealization watching Craig's Data. Like, I wonder if there's more. There has to be more. Like, you know, like, Jesus Christ, if there's footage of Tattered and Torn being recorded, I would lose my fucking mind. If there's footage of like anything of like Deluded and like 7426, like if there's footage of that, I'm losing my fucking mind, bro. But yeah, that's, you know, that's pretty much it, like what I had to get off my chest. Like, to be able to sit down with Craig Jones in the studio and just like ask him this shit. Kid in a fucking candy store. But yeah, I mean, you know, if there are any Slipknot fans out there that feel the same way, that feel the same passion for old Slipknot, please reach out and let me know if anybody has any insight on the production of 7426, please reach out and let me know. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got for now. I have a lot more Slipknot, takes to go. But yeah, that's pretty much my fascination with Craig Jones and early day Slipknot. I love Craig's shot in Spit It Out. I love the shot of him on that hotel bed, on the fucking bed, with the light going on his mask, and he's watching the TV. So fucking sick. That video is so fucking sick. That video is so. That's the other. I almost forgot. That's the other sample I want to fucking know. To Spit It Out. Wow. That's my best impression of it. It's really hard to sing that. That white noise, like. That's. I can listen to that for hours. I can listen to that for hours, dude. It's so soothing. I sampled both of them. I sampled both samples in my own songs. Yeah, fuck. Craig Jones, please reach out. I have questions. I have a lot of in-depth technical questions to ask you. Yeah, that's it. Love you. Peace.